guys, it's Robin, RsIslandCrafts, and welcome to my craft room. This is my Whip It Wednesday video where I show you whatever I worked on in the craft room, whether it was just for a little bit or I worked on it for days and days and days. And that was Miss Whiskers. Bye, Miss Whiskers. She likes to think she owns my craft table here and that she can just sit on whatever she wants whenever she wants until I start talking to myself, and then she freaks out and leaves. Now, for any of you that were worried, yes, this is another donation quilt, or it might be one that's going in my shop. I'm not sure yet. Yes, there was a cat on it, but that's perfectly fine. It's okay. Because, one, she's not going to do any damage to it. She is going to get a little fur and dander on it. But before this quilt ever leaves my house, it does go through the washer and dryer. And I also like to fold it up and put it in a Ziploc bag while I'm out in the garage so that I'm not bringing it back into the house to catch any fur. Because let's face it, I have 3 cats and a dog in the house. There's going to be fur everywhere, whether I allow them into my craft room or whether or not they sit on a quilt. I have cat fur on my clothing. It's going to be on my hands, even if I'm washing my hands constantly. It's going to be everywhere, and it's going to get carried in, especially on my socks. By the end of the day, I have very furry socks, no matter how much I sweep and mop the floor. Now, since we are looking at this quilt is very washed out right now. This is a fun green color. You'll be able to see a better representation of it if you check out my Talk to Me Tuesday video yesterday, where I kind of held it up from a distance. It seems when it's a little bit too close and in a certain area, it just washes out all this green. This green here kind of goes nice with this jungle baby fabric. But what are you going to do, right? This is the quilt that I've done this week for, like I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to put it into the art fire shop or if I'm going to go ahead and consider this my charity quilt. It's a little bit bigger. It measures 36 inches by 49 inches in length. So it is a little bit bigger than I have been making the baby quilts. And once again, it really doesn't matter because babies come in all sizes and they actually grow up. Imagine that. And they get bigger and need bigger quilts. This one actually would work for a toddler also. And if you wanted to put it a certain way across you can put it on the couch. There's many uses for a quilt this size. So I haven't decided yet, and it's not going to really matter because it's only a quilt top. But I did make the binding. I have not folded it over and done any of the fancy stuff yet, but I have made the binding. When I made the strips, I discussed it yesterday. I'm going to put a link down below to the blog where I get this pattern from. MaryQuilts.com, I believe it is. She has a lot of go-friendly and quick and easy quilt patterns that you can use. I modified this one to make it a little bit smaller in length and narrower because I didn't need the big full-size lap quilt type situation. But because you're cutting your fabric selvage to selvage, you're going to have extra pieces left over. So I trimmed them off. And it ended up being about 6 inches, I think. Give or take. Maybe 7 or 8. Because I did get 2 strips of 2.5 inch squares out of for my binding. 2.5 inch strips. So that's what? That's 5 inches. So yeah, it's probably about 6.5 inches. I cut some of the green. And I just alternate it with these strips that are already set and cut. And just in case, now right from measures from tip to tip here, it says I have an extra 12 inches when I'm done doing the perimeter of my binding. 12 inches is what they say you should have, but I'm always nervous with it because sometimes at 12 inches, if it lands a little weird or does something strange in the corner, because a lot of times I end up with these seams in the corner, no matter how hard I try and lay it out ahead of time. So I went ahead and I just cut a width of strip of fabric in black, and I added that on. And if I need it, I'll have it. And if I don't, I'll have it for another quilt. So this makes baby quilt number 3 for the year. And we are, oh wow, we're in the 5th week of January. It has seemed like a very long month. Now I know months come with 28 for February, 30 and 31 for the other months. But sometimes if you have extra Fridays, like this week, this January, we have 5 Tuesdays, 4 Fridays, so basically you're still only having 4 weeks. But with that 5th week like that, it feels like there's an awfully long time from start to finish. But I guess it's just whatever's been going on in your life, right? I do have a finish this week. I finally got this dishcloth off the needles. It's probably been sitting on the needles Who knows? It could have been there November, December, I don't remember. But I had a little bit of time and no other quick project to work on that I didn't need to reference a pattern. So I was just towards the end here, I said, let me just get this off the needles. It's been on there way too long. So if you're ever interested in purchasing any of these dishcloths, I do have them in my Art Fire shop, and you'll find the link down below in the description box. Oh, speaking of bindings, I wanted to ask you guys, when you take your bindings, if you do the mitered corners one, the mitered join like this, where it's joined on the diagonal, so you're putting your two fabrics together here, and there's the extra green right here, and you stitch across. When you cut this off, do you throw that away or do you save it? I always save mine. I have been saving mine since the first time I started making quilts. Now, they're not all in this jar. These are only the ones that I've used since I've been into this craft room here. So that's a lot of binding strips. There are some from other different types of projects where I've had to do something where I've made it on a diagonal. So I do have some other ones here, so maybe they're not all just from this room. I have been in this room for a couple years. This is from my Halloween quilt. This is from a horsey quilt. This is from a baby quilt for a gift. It's really nice to look back and see the different ones you have from other projects. But I plan on using this to do a special project later on in the future. This is from a wall hanging that I did. So yeah, there's a lot of different ones in here, and I saved them because these are really kind of, now I won't be making little half square triangles out of these. I have done that with other projects, like when you're making the snowball blocks and you do the corners. None of these are actually the same. I just randomly cut them. So you can have some pieces that are larger, and then you've got smaller ones and weird offcuts. So while I've saved them, they're not going to be half square triangles. I'm going to do some type of a little bit of a creative style quilt with these. But I like to save them. Let me know in the comments if you save them. Okay, back to the regularly scheduled program. Crabapple Hill Stitchery is starting a new free stitchery in the month of February. February is National Hand Embroidery Month, at least that's what they tell us. And they're doing this thing where they have all these, you can find this on their website. I'm going to try to remember to put the link down below. But if you go to their website, you have to click a couple little tabs, and it's under the downloadables, and they have a few free patterns there. But what they said they're going to do is every day they're going to go ahead and pick one of these squares, and they're going to stitch it. And on Instagram, they're going to do, I guess, a little video or a little picture thing and show you how to do the stitches and fill in each block. So what they're doing is they're actually coloring in with some type of pencil or markers. All of these squares are like colored in different pink and stuff like that on their fabric. But I decided I don't really feel like doing that, and that's very, I want this to be a Halloween. I want this to be a Valentine's Day wall hanging, but I don't want it to be screaming, you know, pink, pink, pink. I love pink, but that's just not what I want this time. So once I get this opened, what I did is I stitched mine. It's going to be hard to see because of the fabric I chose. You see, I stick mine on this. This is actually the same as this green fabric down here, but it's in blue. You see how it has like paint brushes that almost look like they're palm fronds or something, but they're basically brush strokes. And I went ahead and stitched it all out with a micron pen. It has a nice thin line. Now this pen is permanent, so once it's on there, it's on there. I have to make sure I stitch over all these really neatly, or that these lines are going to show. This is my favorite block. Now some of them, I did not transfer all of the stitches because those are going to be lazy daisy. So some of these are actually just looking a little bit blank because I did not want to trace everything, because if you don't cover it, then you're going to see the stitches. Now when I'm using the Friction pen that's going to go away with heat, I trace everything, but this one is not going to go away. So I was really careful about what I chose to trace and what I didn't. I will not be doing this every day and stitching one block at a day. I think what I'm going to do is do this mostly in pinks and purples, and maybe if I pull out a light pink, I might want to stitch on this block and this block and that block, and do partials of each one as I change the color, so I'm not constantly changing out my thread. So I think this is going to be a fun project. Do I need another hand embroidery project? No. But is it going to be a fun one? Yes. And I have a few ideas for how this is going to look once it's all done stitching and I turn it into a wall hanging. So I added another project. That's okay, right? Now here's a project you've seen before. This is the gray and pink shawl that is still just gray, but I've run out of yarn. Now I'm supposed to knit this, as I told you, to row 64, or to add 64 rows onto it. I have put a decent amount on. I put a few inches on there, but as you see, I've run out of yarn. I have to pop into Michael's and get more yarn because I am only on row 26. So there was definitely a loser here in Yarn Chicken. I did not win. I looked for it online, but if you buy it online, you have to buy it like 3 skeins of it, and I really don't want to buy 3 skeins. So this is going to have to wait until I can run up to Michael's. I'm hoping to go up maybe later at the end of this week, maybe on Thursday, and pick up another skein of that so I can finish off the gray, and really I want to get into this pink. So I was trying to work on it a lot this past week so I can get to that point, but I ran out of yarn. What I haven't run out of yarn yet, and I hope that I don't, is the bonbon hat. Now ignore this marker here. This is where I was last week. I've decided to go ahead and they had you start your decreases pretty far back here. Yeah, probably about right here. I've gone ahead and added some more on so that it's a little bit taller of a hat, because if I had started my decreases back here, I probably would have only gotten it to be about a 7-inch hat. And that's not really tall for the head. You want to make sure you can pull it down over your ears and still have some room at the top of your head. And then if it's a little too long, you know, you could always, maybe not with this hat, but with regular brims, you can fold them up. When you can have that little bit of a slouch. But if it's too short, you're just not going to be able to cover your ears, and that's never fun. Because if you're going to wear a hat, you want to make sure you keep your ears warm. So I think that one is looking really nice so far. I really like how it's a folded brim, so it has this nice rolled edge. Now, of course, I'm using more of the brown yarn than the cream because, as you can see, you've got more brown yarn because of the brim and everything like that. I started the hand piece quilt along. If you want more information about this, this is our block 1. We were doing 4 patches. And if you go ahead and look down below in the description box, you'll find a link to my blog. I'm actually still doing my blog. I'm just trying to make sure I get at least a post in there a week. So I hand stitched this. You can see that it's not machine stitched, it's hand stitched. I haven't pressed it at all because I haven't decided which way I want everything to go. I think it's going to be a lot based on the next square that goes over. I think we're only doing sashing, so it really won't matter too much. But there's my first block. And now that you've seen my first block, I'm actually thinking about doing it over again. I do have a couple issues where I didn't get things lined up exactly like I liked, but that's okay because you're hand stitching and it takes practice. By the time we finish our 9th block in the series, everyone's going to be a master at it. But I did see one of the other participants, instead of adding the white squares in here, she used all of her colored squares and just made a variety of them in there. So I can add more of these colors in, either the same ones or different ones, and take out the white squares. So I think I'm going to go ahead and make a second block. And then I'll decide what I want to do, if I want to use this one or the other one, and that'll be determined after I finish all the other blocks. Now the last project that I worked on was my purple barley hat. I was working on this a lot during the week. As you can see, I made it from here to here. I'm almost getting ready to start the decreases, and at that point, it's just home free. After that, you're going to be getting smaller and smaller, and it goes faster and faster. I had to set this aside, though, because I'd spent so much time knitting on it that I just couldn't knit on it anymore. I just had enough. Sometimes that happens with projects when we spend so much time working on them that we just need to go ahead and switch over to a new project. So this one's looking really nice. I'm knitting it at just a little bit of a tighter gauge here because I'm using the 2 yarns together. I have the 2 purples that I'm holding together. These are really thin. They're thinner than a sock yarn, but not quite to a lace weight. And since I'm using size 2 needles, it's making it nice and tight like you would if you were making socks. And I think that's just going to keep the extra wind and the cold off of your head when you're wearing this hat. And it has that nice little detail. Now, Barley Hat is by Tin Can Knits over on Ravelry. I have a link down below. Anytime you're looking for something, just look down below in the description box. And if you don't see what you need, just go ahead and leave me a comment or send me an email and I'll get you whatever you need. But on my Ravelry page, this is the Barley Hat Light because I'm using a thinner yarn versus a worsted weight. But Tin Can Knits has a collection of knits for beginners. They walk you through different steps and different projects, so by the time you're done, you've learned a variety of stitches. You can make a hat, you can make fingerless gloves, you can make mittens, you can make a sweater, you can make a scarf, you can make a blanket. You know, they have a variety of things for you to try out. And they walk you through step by step in a really gentle way, and they are sizes from like newborn all the way up to, I think it's 4 or 6X. I think it's 6X. So they have a really large size range in there. So it's really a great company that, well, it's a bunch of ladies that are designing these projects for us. So let's back in my batik fabric just because I love the batiks. Now that's it from me this week. I hope you guys have gotten some time to get a little crafty. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments what you guys have been working on this week because I really love to hear the different projects you guys have been working on. Everyone's been working on a nice variety of things lately. So that's it for me this week. I'll see you next week. Bye!